Hello and welcome to part 2. If you didn't see the first video, I highly recommend you go check out that video before you come back to this one. This one will make a little bit more sense then. Because we are answering that age-old question that's been plaguing us for at least a few decades anyway. Which is the better tool watch? The Rolex Explorer II or the Rolex Submariner? Sizing. This was a tough one for me because I'm actually really torn. I actually prefer the wearability and sizing of the 41 millimeter Submariner, even though it's actually pretty much 40.3, 40.4. So it's actually closer to 40 millimeter. But I like the proportions better on the Explorer. Let me explain. The 40 millimeters, 41, it does, like I said, it wears a little bit better. It's a little bit smaller. I have a 7-inch wrist and I think it fits me perfectly. But because it's a little bit smaller, the face is a little bit smaller, the dial on the watch. And we'll talk about legibility here in a second, but the Explorer II, especially with this white dial, these big, huge, kind of silly, big hands with this big, huge dial is so legible. I love that size. Fun, but so tooly and tool functiony. It's almost perfect proportions. It's a little big, but it has to be a little big just to make it such that perfect legibility. It's gonna be tough. I'm gonna have to give them both a 9 because again, I was going back and forth pretty much perfect in different ways. 42 millimeters is about the max size I would want on my wrist, and 40 for a tool watch is probably about the minimum I would want on my wrist. So really, they're both great, perfect sizes, and it's such personal opinion, personal preference on this. So let's just give them both a 9 because they both wear extremely well for their size. Lumen legibility, and this is just the bigger watch. Obviously, is gonna squeak ahead of the smaller watch just because it is bigger. Dare I say it again, a little silly. The Rolex Explorer II, especially with the polar dial, is the most legible watch I've ever had. And this kind of leans itself with the big hands and markers towards the lume. Since they're so big, they can cram a little bit more lume into them, making them just so much brighter. I think, and I'm pretty sure, both watches have the same lume setup or same lume chemistry. The one issue I'm having, it's not an issue really, it's minor, but these watches are both so great, I would just have to nitpick just to separate them, is if you look at the smaller dial, smaller hands of the Submariner, smaller markers as well, the tip of the Mercedes hand is so much smaller than the one in the Explorer II, which means you can't get as much lume into it. And it just doesn't, especially after a long time in the dark, when the lume is fading, that little tip fades the quickest to most of the time. If I'm really like Star Trails or something like that and it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, this watch hasn't really been able to charge with sunlight for many hours, that tip goes away pretty quickly. Whereas on the Explorer II, it fades at the same rate as everything else on the dial. The Submariner is still very legible with its contrast of the black dial and white gold hands, but still doesn't match the black hands and white dial of the Explorer II. And even the Explorer II, any angle you could read it. The Submariner, there are very few angles. Again, I'm very much nitpicking here, but there are some times where you just have to kind of catch the light to see the white gold hand reflections. Again, very minimal, but I'm gonna have to give the Submariner a 7 on this one and the Explorer II a 10. Tool functionality. Now I know this is a little bit broad and subjective depending on what you need your tool watch for, but I want to kind of shorten it down because both these watches have so many tool function elements. Their rough tumbleness, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to kind of, again, shrink it down into the Submariner's main functionality, tool functionality, is its water resistant and moving bezel. The Explorer, again, this is narrowing it down, has a lot more, but it's just the GMT hand and smooth bezel. That's what I'm going to kind of rate these for. I should have named this its extra function. So the GMT hand isn't needed. It's very, very useful. I love it. Especially this one's really just kind of how it looks. It looks so great. But it makes things so much simpler, especially since I don't carry around my cell phone all the time. It is nice to know when you're running a business in, Southern California and you're traveling over in Europe or somewhere, New York or something like that. It is a very nice feature, but it's not truly needed. Whereas the Submariner, if you are a diver, you need that. I'm not sure how deep people can really go, but you do really need that as an extra function. You need that extra toughness. So I think the Submariner is going to have to, again, this is so subjective. The Submariner is going to have to go with a 10 on this because it's so critical, that extra function, if you are using it for that. And the Explorer, I'm going to give a 7 on this one because it's nice to have, but it's not truly needed, but it is extremely nice function to have. Quick interruption. If you are interested in my artwork, we are currently doing a mega sale because we have to clear out both my Los Angeles and Laguna Beach art studio for just an epic project coming up. I'm really excited about it. But if you want to use this opportunity, this one and only opportunity to get my artwork at such a discount, use the link in the description below to check out our online store. The power reserve on these watches. Now this is kind of a throwaway for the whole theme here. I just wanted to let you know what I've been getting as tested. So they're both rated for 70 hours. So let's just mark these as an 8 on the scorecard because they're not class leading, but they're still very good. 120 hours would be nice, but yeah, can't have everything. But the Rolex Explorer II, after the whole time I've had it, it's actually running, when you fully wind it, to about 71. So an hour better than Rolex says it would be for the power reserve. The Submariner is right around 68, 69, 70. It depends if I wind it or wear it. The Explorer II doesn't really deviate that much. But the Submariner, yeah, runs right as what it's rated for. So just if you were interested in that. Onto the bracelets of these watches, and how comfortable are they? Both are made with the oyster steel, which has higher resistance to corrosion than other stainless steel metals, allowing for more time in the salt water. And then they do recommend you wash them off after you've been in the salt water, but you don't have to. And I do have a story about that. My Explorer II, I went swimming with it. We went diving, shallow diving. And I totally forgot to rinse it off. It was a busy day and I left it in my case for almost a week after that. And nothing happened to it. It was a little sticky from, I hope it was the water, the salt water. But yeah, so I can kind of vouch for that. No corrosion at all. Didn't have to clean anything up. So that's very nice. They're both extremely comfortable watches on these bracelets, but I do have to hand this one to the Submariner because it's got that little bit better, I think it's called the quick glide system, which is so nice. You have quite a few millimeters of play in this. So you don't need any tools to adjust the watch band. It's just a click down over. And in 10 seconds, you can fit it over your wetsuit, over a jacket. And then once you're done, another 10 seconds to fit it back to your wrist. The Explorer II doesn't quite have that. It's got a little, I think it's a 2 or 3 millimeter. It's a little hook here that you unhook that gives you a little bit more space. And it's actually become very useful because, again, when I'm in the cold weather, I need to put my watch on over my jacket or long sleeve. So I just have to click that out and it goes right over my long sleeve. So it is very nice, but the system on the Submariner is sublime. It's a helpful function when you're constantly going in and out of the water, switching wetsuits, or just switching out of cold weather gear. I should note, however, even though the bracelets on there are very, very comfortable on both watches, I do, on pretty normal occasion, switch them to either rubber, canvas, or leather band, just for when I'm out hiking. Rolex also does mention that the oyster steel is a little bit stronger and more scratch resistant, the key word there, than other metals. And as you can see here, I can show you my Explorer II. I do wear this a lot, and it does hold up very well against scratches, and this thing has been dinged many, many, many a time. Water resistance. Yes, hands down, this one goes to the Submariner. I'm going to give the Submariner a 10 for this one because of its 300 meters of water resistance. But the Explorer II, it's no slouch on this. It still has 100 meters. So I'm going to give it an 8 on the scorecard because that's hugely impressive. And for those who don't know, how watches judge the water pressure or the depth isn't exactly 100% accurate, as in 300 meters means 300 meters. Given Rolex, I hear, is a lot better and more accurate than a lot of other watch brands. For example, I was reading a surf magazine. Every time you go surfing in medium surf, you put about what is equivalent to 60 meters depth of that pressure on your watch. Again, you're not going down 60 meters when you're surfing. It's that pressure that feels like if you were under 60 meters. So that just goes to show you how important water resistance is in a good tool watch. Because just alone, if you're out somewhere and you need to go swimming fast and you have to keep your watch on, there's a lot of pressure, water pressure on that watch, especially if you're a good swimmer. You're only going maybe a meter deep at the most, but there's still a lot of pressure. Or also too, like me, when I'm swimming in rivers or lakes or up creeks, that pressure, that water that I'm fighting on those hikes, through Zion, the subway, and the Narrows there's a ton of pressure water. And even though you're not that deep, there's a ton of pressure on that watch. So water resistance is very important, and both these should score score very high. Because you never know when you'll just be sitting on a beach enjoying a Mai Tai, then all of a sudden these Navy SEALs come recruit you to help them dive on this stuck submersible that was collecting gold off an old ancient Spanish Armada ship. You never know. Appropriate for every occasion. Now, I think this idea has been kind of lost in today's idea of a tool watch. Tool watches aren't just for out and about, rough and tough, out in nature, made only to be tough and durable. I think in today's world, a tool watch has to do everything and be appropriate for any occasion. At least in my mind, that makes it, that leans more towards the ultimate tool watch. It's just a watch that could do everything. And now on this case, both of these watches are great. We've already talked about this outdoors, in the wilderness, in the water, whatever it may be. I think they're both amazing tool watches for that. But for formal events, gallery events, which I always find myself going to, and when I travel, I have so much gear anyway. I don't want to be carrying around multiple watches, one to be outdoors, one to go to these formal events. So both these watches fit this mold that they are appropriate in almost any occasion. I do have to lean a little bit more towards the Submariner as the winner on this one, just because, and I say this a lot, but I don't mean it in a bad way at all. It is more of a jewelry piece. It is a better looking, cleaner looking watch. And I'll say it again. I love the Explorer II, how it looks. It looks like a true tool watch. Submariner as well, but it's a little bit more elegant of a watch, especially with the ceramic bezel, the shininess, the black on black, just the cleaner, more traditional look. So I will mark the Submariner a little bit higher. I'll give it a 9 and the Explorer II a 7. Because again, I would have no problem in any event wearing either one of these watches. But again, too, the Submariner is a little bit more traditional and elegant, making it a little bit more acceptable for formal events. Going under the radar. Now, I'll be the first to admit, neither one of these watches quite goes under the radar as much as I wished it did. I got the polar dial. I've talked about in my other videos because I thought most people wouldn't recognize it as a Rolex because there's very few white dial Rolexes. And same with the Submariner, the black bezel. I had an option for the green, but I wanted the black because I thought black on black, it's gonna go a little under the radar. I've been wrong many a times, but this was a surprise to me because, yeah, the Submariner, wow, it's well known. And I get so many questions on it. I've only had it for a month and a half. But so back to it. I've mentioned it earlier in the video. I swap both of these for other straps a lot of the times, both for comfort as well as to help them go under the radar. Because I will admit, once these are on different straps, the Explorer II, I've never been questioned on. It completely goes under the radar on a different strap. The Submariner, not quite as much. I've had it on a different strap and I've already been approached a few times with questions about it. No big deal, all safe. But on this one, there's gonna be a big swing. The Submariner, I'm actually gonna have to give it a 4 for this one because I cannot believe how many people have actually approached me to ask questions about this watch. I know it's the most iconic watch maybe ever. Take this with a grain of salt though, because I do a lot of events, local events in the area. I have this YouTube channel because I get a lot of comments saying, I never get any questions on my watch, but just take that into consideration. I do a lot in the local community. I'm doing art shows all the time, so I'm in front of a lot of people. So that's probably why. And people come up to talk to me about my art, and then I also have the watch on. So that's probably why I get so many comments on it. But again, the Rolex Submariner, I'm gonna have to give a 4 to because it's almost every time, not every time I put it on, but at least once or twice a week, I've approached with people having questions about this watch. Whereas the Explorer II, not nearly as much, especially when it's on a different band. Different band, I don't get any questions ever about it. So I'm gonna give the Explorer II an 8 on this one, because it does fly a little bit better under the radar than the Submariner does. On that note, flying under the radar isn't all that important to some people. I know some people want to be noticed. I will admit that some of the people that have come up and asked me about the Rolex Submariner, I've become friends with and now I communicate with on a somewhat regular basis. So, to their own. The wearing experience. Now, I've been trying so hard this video to be subjective, but I think it's going to kind of come out now that I will admit, my favorite of the two watches right now is the Rolex Explorer II. Wearing experience of this watch, I love it. In every video of mine, I say, just looking at it puts a smile on my face because it's such a tool watch. It's silly, it's fun, it's good looking, it's rugged, it's tough. It's everything. It's a little unique in a way. Perfect 10 for the Rolex Explorer II. I absolutely love this watch. This is my daily wear, and it is my favorite watch, personally. Not to say it's a better tool watch, just for me personally and how I use it, it is a better tool watch for me personally, because I mean, I go swimming and stuff like that. I'm not scuba diving all the time. That's, a handful of times a year for me. My favorite place to be is out in the wilderness, out in nature, out in the woods, desert, out hiking. And the Rolex Explorer II is a little bit better equipped and was designed just for that. However, I absolutely love in the short period of time that I've had this watch, the Rolex Submariner date, it's such a great watch. It's so traditional while still being cutting edge. Gorgeous watch. And this is gonna sound weird and probably a little stupid, but I think the Rolex Submariner is a better watch, but because it's quote unquote really almost perfect, I like my Explorer because, as I call it, goofy, some people would call it a flaw. And I'm not sure if that, in a weird way, makes it a little bit more humanized to me and I kind of connect with it more. Either way, throughout the video, I have been nitpicking upon nitpicking. Both these watches are incredible, and I feel so fortunate to be able to have both in my collection. So to round out the scores, I'll be giving the Explorer II a perfect 10, Rolex Submariner a 9. I feel 100% confident and would put my faith in either one of these watches in any environment, any location, or situation. Okay, who won? No, we tied. We tied. Oh no. Oh, we just wasted your time. So there you have it. The centuries-old question we aren't going to be able to answer today. Even throughout all our hard work, or lack thereof, today we cannot pick a winner between the Rolex Explorer II and the Rolex Submariner date. But thank you so much again for watching. I really do appreciate it. As of filming right now, when we're coming out, I'll be at the Beverly Hills Art Show, October 21st and 22nd, displaying some of my art pieces. So feel free, if you're in the area, come say hello. I'd love to see you. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Also hit subscribe if you're not subscribed already. It really helps us out. We're really trying to figure out if this channel, I like doing it, but is it really worth our time and effort? Because our main goal here is to sell artwork and be out photographing while showcasing the beauty of nature and why it needs to be protected. So please, if you can, help us with the support. If we don't get the support, I'm sorry to say, we will have to limit this channel, but I want to keep it going. Some others think we can put our time elsewhere. So please prove them, I'm looking at you, wrong, and give us, support us how you can. Thanks again. Cheers.